You ever feel like you're just stuck on a treadmill? Running that 9 to 5 race, just hoping to retire somewhere around age 65? Well, what if I told you there was another way? Today, we are diving deep into a plan that's all about leaving that traditional career path way, way behind. It's called the FIRE movement.
So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to talk about why that standard 40-year plan is feeling so broken. Then, we'll define what this whole FIRE thing actually is. After that, we'll get into the simple math that makes it all click. Then, it's on to the practical stuff, the financial tools you'll need, a really clever tax strategy, and finally, we'll help you figure out what your own version of FIRE could even look like.
For generations, the deals seem pretty simple, right? Work for 40-some years, put a little bit away, and then, hopefully, have a nice, comfortable retirement. But lately, for a lot of people, that plan is starting to feel less like a sure thing and more like, well, a huge gamble. And this question, this is really the one that gets to the very heart of the FIRE movement. It's all about challenging that basic assumption that we have to trade the best, most energetic years of our lives for a paycheck. It's pushing back and asking, is this really the only way?
Now check this out. What's so wild here is the massive gap between what people dream about and what actually happens. Tons of people want to retire early, but the data shows it's just incredibly rare. Look, only 1% of Americans between 40 and 44 are retired. It only gets up to 11% for folks in their late 50s. See, this isn't an accident. It's the result of playing by the traditional rules.
So in response to that whole problem, this really powerful alternative way of thinking started to bubble up. And it's about so much more than just money. It's really about taking back control of your time and ultimately your life.
So at its core, FIRE is really a two-part mission. The FI part is for financial independence. That's the magic moment when your investments are making enough money on their own to cover all your living expenses. And the RE, retire early, well, that's the incredible prize you get for hitting that goal. It's the freedom to choose if you work or not, maybe decades before you're supposed to.
In this quote, it just absolutely nails the mindset shift. It's from Vicki Robin, who wrote a book that's basically required reading for the movement. It completely reframes the goal. It's not just about piling up cash. It's about intentionally designing a life that costs less, but gives you so much more joy and fulfillment. Okay, so this might all sound a little radical, I get it. But the math that powers the whole thing, it's surprisingly simple. Let's break down the basic rules that make this whole strategy work.
This right here is the absolute game changer. Think about it. Wall Street is obsessed with market returns, something you can't really control. But the FIRE community, they focus on the one thing they can control, their savings rate. We're talking people aiming to save 50, 60, even 75% of their income. A higher savings rate is the fast track to a shorter career.
So, what's the magic number? How much do you actually need to save? Well, the 25X rule gives you a really clear target. Let's say you figure out you can live a great life on $40,000 a year. Your FIRE number, your big goal, is $1 million. It's that simple. It gives you a concrete finish line to run toward. And here's why that 25X rule actually works. It's based on something called the 4% rule. It's a guideline that basically says you can safely pull out 4% of your total investments in your first year of retirement, and then adjust that amount for inflation every year after that, and you shouldn't run out of money. And if you do the math, 4% is just 1 divided by 25. They're two sides of the exact same coin.
Okay, so let's put it all together. It's a 4-step journey. Step 1, figure out what you actually spend in a year. Step 2, multiply that number by 25. Step 3, save and invest like your freedom literally depends on it, because, well, it does. And finally, step 4, you start living off your investments. It sounds simple, but that doesn't always mean it's easy. All right, so you've got the rules of the game, but where do you actually put all this money you're saving so aggressively? Let's talk about one of the most powerful tools out there, the IRA, or Individual Retirement Account. So the choice between these two usually comes down to one big question. Do you think you'll be in a higher tax bracket now, while you're earning a lot, or later on when you're in retirement? A traditional IRA gives you a tax discount today. A Roth IRA, on the other hand, gives you tax-free money in the future.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty here. A traditional IRA is great because it can lower your taxable income right now, which is awesome in your peak earning years. But the Roth IRA has some huge advantages for early retirees. There are no required minimum distributions, so the government can't force you to take money out when you hit a certain age. And the big one, the growth and the withdrawals are completely tax-free. That tax-free part is just unbelievably powerful over the long haul. And this chart just perfectly shows you the power of time. This shows the difference if you invest your IRA money in January versus waiting until the tax deadline 15 months later. Over 20 years, that little bit of procrastination can cost you more than $27,000. It's a perfect picture of why starting early and contributing early matters so much.
All right, you ready for a more advanced move? One of the biggest puzzles for early retirees is, how do I get my retirement money out before I'm 59 and a half without getting hit with massive penalties? Well, there's a really clever strategy for that. It's called the Roth Conversion Ladder.
Okay, so here's the play-by-play on how this works. It's brilliant. First, while you're working and making good money, you put funds into a traditional IRA to get that sweet tax break. Then, once you've retired early and your income plummets, you start moving chunks of that money over to a Roth IRA each year. You'll pay a little tax then, but at a much lower rate. And here's the magic. After a 5-year waiting period on each chunk you convert, that money becomes yours to withdraw, completely tax-free and penalty-free.
Honestly, this is kind of the holy grail for people retiring early. You get the tax break when you need it most, when your income is high, and you get tax-free cash when you need it to live on in retirement. It's a seriously elegant way to solve one of the biggest challenges of the FIRE journey.
You know, one of the coolest things about the FIRE movement is that it's not some rigid one-size-fits-all plan. It's more like a flexible framework that you can mold to fit your own life, your own goals, and your own personal definition of what freedom even means.
For instance, you've got LeanFIRE, which is all about extreme minimalism, living a rich life on very little money. Then there's the opposite, FatFIRE, for people who want to retire with a much higher standard of living. You've also got Barista Fire, which is a cool middle ground where you leave a stressful career for a fun part-time job to cover expenses. And CoastFIRE, where you save so much early on that you can eventually just, well, coast and let compound interest do all the heavy lifting for you.
Of course, let's be real for a second. This path isn't for everyone, and it has its critics. Trying to save over half your income it's really hard, especially if you have kids, or you're taking care of your parents, or you're not in a high-paying field. It takes a ton of discipline and, frankly, a pretty good income to even get started.
So, as we wrap this all up, I want to leave you with this one question. Because the numbers, the rules, the strategies, they're all just tools. The real goal here is freedom. So what would you do if getting a paycheck was totally optional? Would you travel the world, start a business, volunteer for a cause you love, spend more time with your family? Because that's what this is all really about. What does your financially independent life look like?